Can you turn this on for me so I can see whether we can amplify it that way? Because we're not going to have to go really.
Yes, we are.
Enough through the speaker. But maybe if I hold this.
As well, just watch the feedback, obviously.
Oh, how are you? Good, how are you? Good. Is this board even getting used?
Well, what about that? Is that not the right end?
Yeah, you've done it before, right? You've done it before? Yeah.
Okay, is it okay? Sorry. It's okay. Let us know, like, look over here and like wave at me if it's good, okay?
Okay. Yeah. I think that I have to talk in the microphone first.
Right,
to make it
exactly.
work.
Yeah. That's how people be buying books. Yep. Sweet ass. The modern age. That's awesome. We went to the art sale in New Orleans during Washington and Davis Square. It was fun.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was rad. Yeah.
It's alright, I mean, they're not
Right.
whatever your enterprise might be, you know.
Yeah, drug selling, selling your old crap.
I'm gonna sit up over here so you can be next to the booth when we do this.
Okay.
If I
Upstairs. No, it's cute. It's right here. Sit down. The pretty girl.
I hope everyone's had a fabulous day. Norm, I think it's been for at least the last 3 years, maybe 4. Like, keep showing up. And we have taken advantage of your flying through the East Coast of the U.S. to have you
Hey,
come. And one of the things that you said last year was that you've come and shared with people what's on your mind and what you're up to, and just taking advantage of this time. So it's good to do that. And we get the bonus that we not only have the bonus this year, but we have an advantage list. And they can have that conversation about, and who's the luckier one. But we really appreciate that you're both here this year from British Columbia getting into mischief. And are looking forward to what it is you'll have to share with us this afternoon, because we don't ever actually tell you what we'd like that to be. We let you figure that out. Thank you very much for that, and I appreciate that everybody is, so many people who make their way back there this afternoon. I guess it's going okay in previous years.
All right, thank you. And I'm the Emma part of this duo. And probably I will be doing much of this presentation because we call this reasonable accommodation. I talk faster. But we have a lot of material to get through. So we want to introduce you to a project we've been working on. But there's a couple of things first. It might make sense if people want to move in a little bit more so that you can actually see what we're going to do here and hear what we're going to do here, if that makes sense, to kind of get cozier. Come on, this is the Summer Institute. We're supposed to be comfortable with that. And I've already made a lot of trouble by asking maintenance to turn down the lights because of what we're doing up here, but also because I am kind of sensory sensitive. So if the lights go down, you'll know why. It's an accommodation for me.
Where is the person?
Sure.
Yeah. But the first thing I want to do is I want to know if anybody has acknowledged that it's Barb Funk's birthday today. It is too. Happy birthday, Barb. What was that? You were going to get not on my watch.
You're not going to get away with it. Another student here to say both to you and Stephanie this morning, but we're going to get it out of it by
You did it.
now you're ready to do well.
All right, let's do it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Barb. Happy birthday to you and many more. Great place to spend your birthday, huh? All right, so normally when we come here, Norm, and I guess I did once, we talk about ideas. And this time, what we really want to do is share with you a project that we've been working on. Before we do that, I want to ask you, how many of you are affiliated in some way with an agency that provides support to people with disabilities? How many of you are parents of someone with a disability? Grants, microboards, or individualized funding? Others? Do tell. Advocates, strangers? Undisclosed? Yeah, I always like to think of myself as undisclosed. Okay, well, we're going to talk about a project that we've developed over the past couple of years. And to start that off, I'm going to show you something. This is a quote. I hope you can read it. If you can't, I will read it anyway. From a woman named Sarah Cobb, who is a colleague of ours. In my work, I do a lot of work around mediation, negotiation, etc. And Sarah is very involved in something called narrative mediation and negotiation, and she teaches at George Washington University. This is what Sarah says. She says, stories matter. They have gravitas. They are grave. They have weight. They are concrete. They materialize policies, institutions, relationships, and identities that circulate locally, globally, anywhere, and everywhere. Stories have consequences, and stories are the meat of what we do. Norm and I have gone on through a lot of years early in our career thinking that theory was what mattered, and that story informed theory, but we have completely reversed that to understand that story is what matters, and theories are the way that we use to try to make sense of it, if we're lucky. So stories really matter. And in that context, we've really been looking at what kind of stories are circulating right now in agencies and places where we gather to try to provide support for people. One of the perks of the job that Norm and I have is that we get to travel around and talk to people. And when we talk to people, we invariably ask, what's going well, what's difficult for you, how are things in general? And over the last few years, over and over and over again, especially in agencies that provide support, and while we may all have ideas about whether agencies are the best way to support people, and we'll leave our opinions out of that one, we have them. And we work in them, and we try to make them better. And what we heard over and over again from leaders and others was that, especially now with the cutbacks that everyone's experiencing, the thing that is the most, has fallen most by the wayside is the values training. People say, you know what, we've got money to do health and safety stuff, we've got money to do medication review. I'll be much better now. Thank you. And you'll be able to see this better, so. This is what tends to fall by the wayside, and what tends to happen is that values become almost the thing that we can say, oh, well, we really want to do that, but we don't have the money to do it anymore. So people are saying, let me back up. We were talking to an executive director of an agency in Vancouver, and he was really wanting to change what he was doing. And he said, I brought Michael Kendrick in for 3 days. And Michael Kendrick, for any of you who know Michael, does fabulous work. He said, I trained 100 of my staff for 3 days. And you know what? I'm not sure I saw any difference in that. And he said, help me think about a way to move the whole agency forward in terms of culture. And after we picked ourselves up from the floor laughing, because we really don't hold ourselves in that high esteem, we said, let's think about that. And to make a long story short, we began to think about what might be possible. Would there be another way? Absolutely. We're married, by the way, so this happens all the time.
The other thing is that what we were seeing and what people were saying was that the lack of funding that led to a lack of values training is resulting in an increased custodial attitude towards support. So a lot of new people coming in were not getting the conversation, they were not getting the training from the people that we all have had training from people who challenge us to think of new ways. And so what we will see is, first of all, a more custodial mindset towards support, and people not seeing a problem with that. And the second expression we saw of that was increasing reliance on compliance-based behavior program. And again, not many people, as we could see, were particularly bothered by that. So,
And a slide into segregation. We were talking with Jack about this earlier this week, and said, the slow slide into a more custodial mindset. And Jack said the slow slide is more like the grease slope. And in some places that is definitely true. And so we've been very concerned about that. We've spent our entire careers trying to think about how to do things differently. And we know the value of the conversations that we've had with many of the people who are here in this room, and the people who have inspired us to think differently. So we thought, what could we do to bring those voices to people who would not normally get them? And so what we did was we looked at the whole idea of TED Talks and thought, would there be something specific to what we do here that might be helpful? And yes, I know. See, we are married. We do that. I know, I always do. So we asked ourselves 3 questions. How do we provide engaging, effective counter stories Stories that begin to challenge the way that we have of looking at how we do things, who people are, etc. Second thing is, how do we widely distribute these counter stories so that maybe they actually have some influence? Maybe actually sparks conversation. And we've been talking about Margaret Wheatley's idea of conversations that matter, and our title for this project is a riff off the idea of conversations that matter. And how do we maximize the likelihood of administration and support staff, clinicians, families, etc., seriously engaging with these counter stories? So we developed this project called Conversations That Matter in a very social enterprise-y kind of way, working with, first of all, people in this field who joined with us to contribute pieces to this project, many of whom are in this room. John O'Brien and Connie, John McKnight, Linda, Jack, Lisa Hotelan, Beth Gallagher, and others. And so what we developed is something called Conversations That Matter, and that's what we'd like to introduce you to. So essentially, this is an online conference on disability values and community living. So what we tried, first of all, we tried to make this site as financially viable as would be possible, as close to free as we could, and still keep the site sustainable. So for $20 a year, people can sign on and have access to all of the videos or all of the interviews that we've done. We'll show you. It's based on TED Talks. So yeah, Norm's saying, do you want to talk about the credo? About, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, we developed something called a credo for support, which some of you may have seen, others may not. Anyway, it was a short video that basically came about as a result of a request that we had to write a chapter in a book. And being the kind of people we were, we waited till right at the deadline, and then just basically wrote, do this, don't do that. Do this, don't do that. And it got published, and Norm was fooling around and made it into a PowerPoint. And at that time, PowerPoints were very new and revolutionary. We set it to music, and we kind of delivered it all over the place, and people seemed to like it. And they said, you know, this is good stuff. It gives us stuff to talk about. But the thing they liked the most was that it was 4.5 minutes long. So we thought about that. And we thought, you know, we need to be able to provide things that are shorter and deeper, rather than longer and wider. As trainers, we understand that, you know, that the 1 and 2 day wonders that we sometimes do in training are not as effective as we would like them to be, and it kind of pains us to say it because we make our living that way. But we ask people to go to these things, we ask them to listen, we ask them to internalize, we ask them to then come back and deliver that information to their coworkers. And it's probably really unfair. The human brain just doesn't do that very well. So we understood that probably shorter is better. And we tend to say that we're in a soundbite culture, but it's not just about being in a soundbite culture. It's just, what can you manage, what can you internalize, what can you actually take away and make real? What can you do about thinking about how does, not in the abstract, but how does this actually relate to the people that I care about? So, in that spirit, here's what we did. Okay, there we go, on from here. So we wanted to make something accessible. Again, the format is online, short, manageable chunks. Nothing is over 20 minutes. You can look at it on a computer, a tablet, a smartphone, anywhere you have an internet connection. In geographically remote places, agency people told us, you know what, we never had money to send people out to anything or bring people in. So this works for us. And here's the thing, we have asked agencies, the agencies that we work with, to sign up all of their staff for 3 reasons. First reason is the great democratic principle. We really believe that if everyone has access to the same information and we can have conversations about that, then culture change is at least more likely. So the other reason is it wouldn't be financially viable for us to continue the site if we didn't. So that's on our side. The third thing is that for better or for worse, a lot of agencies go through accreditation processes. Whatever you may or may not think about that is what they do. And what we've done is we've hooked up what the videos that we have to accreditation processes so that people can do things more quickly and spend more time supporting people and less time figuring out how to meet accreditation standards. We in British Columbia have something called home share providers, where people go and live with a family, and we also have seen this as something, a resource for those people who typically, at least in our area, don't get training. They're funded differently, so they never get any training. And while accountability is supposed to be managed, it largely is not, and conversations are not often on the same page. So we're looking at that. Families, lots of families who are really interested. Family Support Institute in British Columbia has signed up all of their resource parents, and in other places in Alberta and other places as well. And board members. Bruce Uditsky from Community Living Alberta said, give me something I can take into the community that I can use in a presentation, so I can just spark a conversation. So we've tried to do all of that. So here's what we've done. In agencies, what we know is that people are busy. And they're so busy that anything extra seems too much. But it's interesting how values become the extra thing that people don't have time for. And we really, really worry about that. So what we think is going to make this stuff work in agencies is if people link it to their HR processes. First of all, in agencies in British Columbia and other places, people are using it for doing pre-screening and hiring. They're asking somebody to watch a video, a values-based video, to complete a reflection question, we'll show you that, and then they basically can have a look at what people say about what they've watched, and just kind of suss out whether it's actually going to be a good thing to actually have an interview with that person. So it's a way of doing pre-screening. People are using it during probationary periods. In agencies, we typically hire people and then they get deployed all over agencies. And by the time it comes time to do an evaluation, nobody really has ever worked with that person. And people are going, well, how do I do an evaluation that makes any sense at all? So what we've said is, ask people periodically throughout the probationary period to watch a video, complete a reflection question, send it in. It's a way of keeping your finger on the pulse so that you can see where people are, what they're thinking about, what matters to them. And you can have meaningful conversations with them when it comes time to actually do that review. Orientation. People are using these videos in orientation processes. Performance reviews in the same way as probation. Our performance reviews in this sector are really funny. You know, like we airlifted them from the corporate sector, and we keep hearing stories about how people do paper reviews and they just get rubber stamped. And even 360s seem to create a low-grade culture of paranoia, where people go, oh, who said what about me? And why did they say that? And was it because I pissed her off last week? It probably is. Or they say things like, if you say something nice about me, I'll say something nice about you. And then you send them out to parents and other members of the community, and those people say, if you send me one more of those things, I'm going to kill you. So we think that maybe a more valuable way is to have a conversation about something meaningful and how it relates to the work you do and the people you support. Team meetings. The biggest uptake on the site is around team meetings. People will play one of these conversations, and you'll see what they look like in a minute, before a team meeting, and then they'll have a conversation before they ever get to the pragmatics of what they're going to do. They talk about, what's important, what's valuable, and how does this relate? Home share assessments in the same way, when you're looking to find somebody who somebody is going to live with and make sure it's a good fit. During difficult conversations, if you're just noticing somebody is a little more directive or a little more paternal than you wish they were, you can have a conversation with them about that in a less adversarial way. You can kind of triangulate it. Let's look at this together and think about how that relates to our work. And most important, and finally, is when you want to spark creativity. What else could we do? What's interesting? What's important? All right. Are you with me so far? Okay. So we've been linking it to, this is really strange for us because we don't live in this world, but in this world. But we were asked to think about how it relates to core competencies. And this is CARF, for example. There's a lot of different accreditation organizations out there. CQL and what's Focus and ACDS, etc. So we were asked to look at that. And these are the CARF core competencies. And people said to us, we ask staff to meet those core competencies. And they go, okay, how? Then we go, I'm not really sure. So we tried to make that work. So what we've done is we've taken these videos and tied them to the CARF core competencies. Now, we started out backwards, and we kind of went, okay, what do you think? Would this one relate to that? And now we're actually going in search of people who can speak to the issues that are on these core competencies. So, presenters. Many of the usual suspects, and lots of these people are in the room. John O'Brien, maybe you know Dave Petoniak, Dave Hingsberger, John McKnight. Michael Callahan, as you know Michael, very involved in supported and customized employment, probably one of the people who's been doing this the longest. He actually traveled through a snowstorm in Mississippi to come and interview with us. We didn't think they had snowstorms in Mississippi, but yeah, there it was. Denise Bissonette, who also does a lot of stuff on employment. Pat Amos, who is the parent of 4 adult children, 3 of whom she says are accused of having autism, and she tells the best stories. Ann Donnellan, who many of you will know, who was probably one of the premier people doing research or having done research on autism as a movement difference, and all kinds of other people. Peter Park, who is, some of you may know, from here in Ontario, who was the co-founder of People First Canada. And we have many upcoming people as well. And I won't go through all of this because we don't have time. What do you?
Now, in designing this, the typical thing would be to design a website, the navigation menus. But I'm a geek. I'm a geek. Well, part of me geek. I also do speaking, but I'm a geek too. And about 45 years ago, I was redesigning a website. I worked half the day doing programming, then the rest of the day playing computer games, just to relax, right? And then one night I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, why can't you put the two together? So rather than going from page to page to page, you could, like a computer game, go from room to room to room. So we did that on our website. It didn't work out for a number of reasons. But then when we started doing this, I called Denise Bissonette said, why don't you use your online conference center? We went, of course! So what we've done, we've designed this like a virtual conference center. Partly because it's cute, but the other reason is that in Vancouver at least, a lot of them you're hiring people who don't use English as their first language or who are not computer savvy. So we want to make it easy to use. So that was the rationale. There are one-liners. If you can't get the conference, we'll bring the conference to you. So, as I said, the URL is conversationsthatmatter.org. When you click it, you get our lovely faces. Now I need you to know, I looked through 4 hours of video trying to find one frame where Emma and I look good simultaneously. I couldn't find one phrase. So that is Photoshop. And when you click on it, when you get just like a conference, they conference program. And there are brand new ways to get their videos. So we're going to show you a video in a minute. Let me just give you a quick overview. Play your program, you click on presenter, and then you get a description and what videos the person does. But right now we have about 40 to 50 videos. That's going to grow about 50 a year, we hope. So the question is, how do you find the videos you may want to see? So we've organized them in 3 areas. They're cross-referenced, and we're called trends, concepts, and topics. And I'm going to tell you what we've done here. Trends. These are like a conference overview. So these trends, as you can see, with disability society, provide respectful support, and actually all of them are respectful support, but anyway, meaning provide family matters and organizational transformation. So, for example, if you click on respectful support, you get all the video without respectful support. So you'll notice there's a little orange box under each video. So you check it, whenever that video shows up, they'll tell you that the orange you already watched it. We had a group of executive directors of agencies automatically form around us and form an advisory group. When we met with them, they said, you know what? We have a lot of jargon in this field. We have person-centered this, customized that, this self-determination. If a new person comes in, it's a lot of stuff to memorize. So one said, can we get to the core? And what we realized is that there wasn't things particular, basic concepts that all of us know about advocacy, listening, belonging, etc. So all the videos can be referenced in more than one area. And finally, the topics, the usual suspects you all know, and possibly not for age. But now let me show you an example of one video so you get a taste of it. I'm going to show you one of our most recent videos of a colleague and friend of ours, Emily Titan. Emily Titan has autism. Emily Titan is autistic. That's right. The autistic community really promotes identity language rather than person-to-person language. Against life and disability rights community, they're reclaiming it. Saying, this is who I am. And the problem with saying autism means something other than me that plays into the idea of you. And there's a huge debate going on between the autistic community, primarily between the autistic autistic adult advocates and organizations like Autism and Speech.
As Art Damon, who is on President's Council on Disability, says, I am autistic. It's not like
So I want to show you one video just to give you a sense of what conversation we're trying to promote the people who support people with disabilities. This is just a 2-minute excerpt of a 40-minute conversation we had with them. Here we go. So, see how when you go there, you click on the name. You get a little card with a description. You click on view videos. You see your video. You click up there. Bingo! You're in the seminar room. Shoot, huh? I'm just saying 2 minutes to listen to everything. Are you ready on the soundboard over there?
Sorry?
Here we go. To start off with, many people assume that autism is a disease that needs to be cured. I know one of the basic principles of the Autistic Advocacy Network is autism isn't a deficiency, it's neurodiversity. Can you talk about that?
Sure. There's this belief, and there still is with some people, that autistic people need to be cured, that we're broken and we need to be fixed, and we're in our own little worlds and all this. And that's actually not true, at least to us. We believe that it's just another way to be. A lot of the thinking has been geared towards fixing or working on normalization, making us undistinguishable from our peers, or non-autistic peers. And so that, the assumption there is that we have to be like everybody else, that there's something wrong with the way we are and the way we think. And so they're trying to take Macs and make them into Windows, going back to the metaphor. And you can't really do that without breaking Macintosh. So although we can do, there are emulation programs for Windows on the Macintosh, and we can emulate a non-autistic person to an extent, but it's extremely taxing on us, and it really takes a lot of our energy, and it's very hard to do. And there's something called the Autistic Crash that we sometimes talk about, and that happens when you've been forced to be normal for such a long time, and then you get to a point where you just can't do it anymore, and you kind of fall down emotionally and mentally, and you get really depressed and stuff. And that's why there are some, papers that went around that I read when I was younger that, why people regress in their 20s and 30s, and I think that happens when we reach that point. So that's one reason, is that making us normal, trying to make us normal, is actually really, really, really bad for us and painful.
Love that. We posted that little snippet on our Facebook page, and within, go ahead, yes. We are working on subtitles furiously right now. We have someone doing it, and we're going to have subtitles for everything. Yes. We've only been doing this for a year, and we've been furiously working. And so, we're trying to get everything up to speed, but yes, absolutely, it's a priority. So we have someone, even as we speak, working on that. So it's interesting, we posted that snippet on Facebook, and within 48 hours, Emily had 12,000 hits and 158 shares. And I would put to you that a huge proportion of that came from the autistic community, who love Emily. What's not to love? And there is a movement afoot among young, on-fire, kick-ass advocates in the autistic community that gives our hearts, makes our hearts go thumpity-thump. We talked to Ari Lehman again, who is with the ASAN, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, and he said, we're taking young people now who are 14 and 15 years old, and we're training them to be advocates. And I said, damn, Marty, you know, we missed the boat on that in our communities. And he said, we think it's really important. And so look out. We've got quite the community up and coming here. And Emily's part of that. So now I want to just show you what else we've done. Like, we really want to make this actually work. We know that when you just offer something, especially in agencies, by the way, it's not just agencies who are signing on. We have people in micro boards doing individualized funding. We have individual people signing on just to have a look around, etc. But in agencies, we know that if you just provide this stuff as an add-on, that's all it's ever going to be, and it will not make any change. You have to tie it into the processes by which we do stuff. You have to say it's important enough that we do this. So, you know, we were talking to a friend of ours, Doug Carton, this week, and Doug said, you know, it's kind of like the difference between responsibility and accountability. We hope that people will be responsible for doing really wonderful things and getting people out in the community. But we haven't in our agencies really asked for accountability all that much. And this is not big brother-ish accountability, but this is actually clarity. What is it that we're doing? Why are we doing it? What's important, and how will we get it done? We know that if you don't tie it into the processes of an agency, it'll just be something that you give people and say, well, have a look at that if you have a moment. Almost like it's optional, right? And we really wish you would, but we're saying, and after a year in, this is what we know for sure, tying it in with, again, the human resources stuff. And this is the other piece that we've done. We've created reflection questions, which kind of closes that accountability loop. So for every video, we have 2 or 3 questions that people can answer and reflect on. And they're all behavior-based. They're not true and false, and they're not, you know, multiple choice. They're basically, think about this and think about the people you support. Is there something that resonates here for you? So this is what that looks like. So here you'll see there's a little green thing that says complete reflection for this video. You click on that, and here's what you get. And you get a question. And after that question, you have a box into which people can type text. And then you can have that if you happen to be in an agency, and people have used this actually like a book club too, which we find really interesting. You can actually fill that out. You may have some people to whom this always goes. We were talking to an HR director in a large agency in Kingston who said, you know what, they all come to me, all those reflections. And what's really happened for me is he said, I've always thought we have really wonderful staff, but this has been so confirming. I read all this stuff and I feel better about what we're doing, and I'm able to have conversations with people in very specific ways about the work they're doing. So you can have it go to one person, or you can have it go to anyone you choose. And then you click on send, and it goes back to that person. And the individual who completed the reflection also gets a copy. So within agencies, sometimes people are using this and putting them in personnel files, and they can actually figure into job changes or whatever. We don't bother with that. That's, you know, anyone's call. But what it does do is it creates the space and the beginning, the catalyst for a conversation. So people are using these in team meetings. They're asking people to watch something and then come back with a reflection question. They're printing these off, and then they have a springboard for a conversation. And this really works when you have a group where there's some quiet people who just need processing time and they just can't like come up with something right away. So you ask them to watch it first, complete a reflection question, and then you can go and you can talk with them about what they've said. And we'll show you how that works in a minute. So, looking at time, I just want to show you how else this is used. We've tried to make it as simple and usable as possible and still have features that people want. So these are the tabs. All right, programs and presenters, that's obvious. So everybody who's on the site is there. New videos, that's obvious too. Accreditation standards, that's fairly obvious. We talked about that. So you might look at person-centered practice training, and you'll see people who have talked about that. Additional resources is one of the areas that we think is potentially really rich, and we'd love to have any feedback from any of you. And what we've tried to do is begin to put stuff on that site that we think is interesting. And we put URLs, we put other videos that we've seen, we put things that people have written, links, etc. So we see that as infinitely expandable. So basically, we'll get stuff and we'll put it up there for you. Facilitation guide. Well, that's me as a talking head, just talking about a few ways in which people can facilitate conversations, either as a book club or within an agency or microboards. Like we've got a real uptake with families who are managing their own support and want to find ways to train staff and actually engage in really meaningful conversations. So this gives you a little idea of how to do that, because not everybody is really skilled in how to do facilitation. Exhibitors Hall. Again, we see this as infinitely expandable. We don't have any of that stuff over there right now. We don't even know if we will. But it's just ideas of what could be on the site. Right now, we do have 5 things on the site. Spectrum Press, Inclusion Press International, Diversity Press, which is Dave Kingsberger's site, Diversity World, which is Denise Bissonette's, and one called the Special Needs Project out of San Diego. So if you click one of those, you go to the website, and you can see what's on offer, and you can order things. So that's neither here nor there with us. We just provide a place for people to have their website shown. And it's just like a conference, right? You have your Exhibitors Hall where you can buy books. So you can actually buy books from Inclusion Press on the site. The lounge and the chat room we don't have up and running yet because it's me with my cement mixer. I used to do cement sculptures. It's amazing what cement will do. Want to talk about creativity? Anyway, yeah. So it's under construction. And we really want to make sure that we do this well. But one of the things that we keep hearing is that staff talk to us about feeling alienated and isolated. And when we really talk further, it doesn't seem like it's about who they're supporting or the work they're doing. It's more about not really feeling connected with something bigger. And, you know, back when I started out, we really felt like we were part of a movement, a civil rights movement. We were on fire about that stuff. We don't hear that all that much anymore. So we're wondering whether maybe just connecting people together to understand that they are part of something big might be helpful. We don't know, but let's try it. So we're going to get that together as soon as we can figure out how to moderate it and make sure that it's really done well. Let's see. Agency resources for agencies. Individuals obviously don't care about this, but if you're an agency, you can put up your own message. You can upload anything you want onto that site. Microboards are doing that too. So you can put newsletters, you can put videos, you can put anything you want. Our web designer will just upload that for you. Okay, your account. Everyone who is on the site will get this. And that basically shows you what you've watched so that you know what you've seen. Now, there are varying levels of permission on the site. And I really want to stress that this is not about being big brotherish, but this is about accountability. And we're fairly clear about that these days. So, do we have that? Oh yeah, right, okay, right. So this is the part where, yeah, why don't you do this?
When people, say manager or program director or HR director, gets administrative privileges, they have, they have 2 more tabs that show up. One that says view reports, the other that says admin FAQs. Those tabs don't show up for regular staff. Now, let's do view reports. Again, let me back up. A year ago, we saw this more or less as a service that we were offering. We thought was a worthwhile and needed service for agencies. In the last year, about 40 to 50 agencies have signed up. Of the 40, 10 agencies, I would say, have really taken this on and really excelled with it. really tweaked it. They really found out what videos would new stuff. And they came to us and they go, before I say that, they say, now the way we feel about this is we're not selling a service. It's like we are a part of the network of agencies and microports who are figuring out a new way of delivering really needed value streams. So that's fun because we feel less like salespeople and more like part of a collaborative team, which certainly is way more comfortable for us. But anyway, what these agencies told us is give us a way to monitor what staff watch and what people's reflections are. So we called up our web designer, said, can you do that? Dude? Yep. So if you're a manager, you get something that says view reports. When you click on it, you can see your staff members and the videos that they watched. If you click on view reflection questions, you get to see the answers that that staff person has given each question. Or you can go back and take a certain video and see all the staff members' reflections to that specific video. So if you're having a team meeting, you can print this out and have a starting point for discussion.
So again, it's not about trying to be big brother, but it is about accountability. And it is about making sure that we find a way to actually use the resources that we have, and they don't just sit in the background for people to use if they kind of feel like it, because that will never change anything. And this is all about creating change. Now, the good news for us is that there are a few agencies who really have reported to us that they're seeing culture change. And for those of you who have participated in this site, I'm hoping that that will make you happy, because people are saying, you know what, we have staff who have never, ever had the opportunity to hear these people, and probably never will. And we now have the ability to bring that to them. And even in little snippets, again, deeper rather than wider, it's making a difference. Finally, administration FAQs, that's pretty straightforward, so we're going to do something on the site about that. And the most important thing that we've been using is sending us your feedback. And people have been. They've been telling us what they're doing with the site, how they're using it. So, a few more minutes. Do you want to show another video? Maybe we should. Would you like to see another excerpt or two of a couple of videos? Why don't we do Anne and Peter?
Give me 1 minute.
We weren't sure how fast we could do this.
Obviously faster
Then we got. So are you with us so far? Anybody have any comments, questions? I hate it when you all talk at once. Yeah.
You're exactly right, that I kind of say, guys, just watch it, we'll give a chance.
Yeah, we've learned that this year. And we've really become much more directive about it, which feels funny, but you know what? You want to make it work. Yeah. You know what? There's privacy regulations that don't allow us to say whether or not someone watched the whole thing. But guess what? The questions, the reflection questions, are behavior-based, and they're completely related to both the video and the work that you do. So it's pretty hard to budge in those. Other? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, this is the learning we've had in the past year, working with people and just thinking, how do we make this work? I think neither one of us really wanted to be, it's not what we do, and we haven't wanted to be directive about stuff, but you know what? Save your money. If you're not going to actually make it part of the culture, then don't buy it. Yeah.
Sorry. Any of the organizations that have taken this card and they're maybe 10 or so that are saying like for meetings, are they able to kind of talk to each other?
That's exactly what we're working on now. Yeah,
It is 50 seconds.
yeah, no, we haven't actually. Thank you. We'll pay the $10 later. But, but yes, that's exactly what we're going to have happen. And this has really become, and it started out actually, but it's really become a social enterprise. And this is about people talking to each other and making connections with each other, and we're beginning to try to facilitate those connections so people can say, well, what worked for you? So yeah, thanks. If I knew what they were.
In the past year, as inside the agencies, there's three things that make this really important, that make this work. The first thing is make sure that the staff and the managers, as part of their performance review, so that when the manager comes in, it says, have you facilitated discussion at team meetings? And so that was the first thing. I'm blanking on the second, I'll remember it in a minute. But the third thing they had said is that it was really important to sign on the managers first. They sign on everyone. But what they do is they notify their managers first. They give them about months to become familiar with the site. And then once the managers are familiar with the site, then they notify the staff. And as we watch this video, I'll remember this one last thing.
Okay, let's just have a look at a short excerpt of the video. Can we start with Ann?
Yeah.
Okay, with Ann Donnellan. How many of you know Ann? Some of you do. Ann Donnellan is absolutely wonderful. She just received a Lifetime Award from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network for her work in understanding autism as a movement difference. And this is what we interviewed her about at her home in San Diego last year. And, autistic people are saying, Ann and Martha Leary and others have described their experience better than anyone. And so she has received this, we consider, a very prestigious award. She's just retired from her work at the University in San Diego. And this is Ann talking about autism as a movement difference. That's how you get into the site. Click. There you go.
Up a little bit.
You very strong perception that autism is a movement disorder. How is autism usually seen, and what is your perception of autism different?
Well, the first thing is autism is seen as a thing somebody has. So it's not a thing. We've never seen it. It's never been found. We spent billions on research on the brain and on genetics, and we're yet to see it. Because it isn't a thing. It's a disruption in very important processes in the human body. And in a movement disorder or movement differences, which is what Martha, Leary, and I prefer to call it, movement differences means that there could be a disruption in the way we regulate and organize our bodies, our senses, our way of being in the world. And that, to the outsider, if you're not aware that that's a possibility, makes people look non-compliant, things we made up to explain what doesn't explain anything. And so we started looking at movement differences, and have found for 20 years that it helps us to know people very differently, and is a lot better than trying to control people. For example, people with Parkinson's disorder have a movement disorder. Now, the fact that they had many years of typical development and experience allows the rest of us to often understand what's happening when things aren't going as smoothly as they hope. The very same things in a person with an intellectual disability label or an autism label is interpreted totally differently. So, for example, if I say to you, come on, we gotta go now, and you don't move in a reasonable period of time, I might consider you non-compliant, one of our favorite words in the field. And the fact is that you may be organizing your body and trying to move and not able to move. I don't know that, but that is very possible. If you have Parkinson's, we talk about that as akinesia, as a difficulty in movement. If you have an intellectual disability or autism, we say that you're being stubborn or you're ignoring us, or all kinds of negative things. So how we deal with things depends on what lens we're looking at them. And in Parkinson's, we would try to give you the personalized support necessary to help you get off that chair. And those same supports often help people with autism. So if somebody sits next to you when you're in the chair and you're having difficulty, for some people, just modeling it, standing up, is enough to allow that person's body to move. But trying to drag them out of that chair or blame them for their behavior gets us into the mess that we have now in far too many situations.
So this is part of a slightly longer piece with Anne. I think it's about, what, 15 minutes? And just to think about this, that excerpt alone would provide fodder for a lot of conversation, don't you think? Like deeper rather than wider. And we found that actually, that people have really been able to stop and think about the people they support in very different ways and how they respond to them. So the next piece we want to play for you, oh, you remembered.
The second thing that agency said was critical is that if the managers have some training around how to facilitate discussions around the video. So in August, what we're going to do 2 more things. We're going to have more specific video about how to facilitate discussions around these videos. The other thing is we're now going to people in these 10 agencies and interviewing them to say, how did you implement this in your agency? So we're going to agencies talking to agencies.
And the piece that we do is really very, very simple. Essentially our metaphor is the Russian doll. So what do you want to do when you get a Russian doll, right? You want to open it up and open it up and open it up. So the idea of digging deeper. I am on sessional faculty at a place called the Justice Institute in Vancouver, where I teach baby mediators and negotiators and coach them. And one of the things that I notice and I coach on the most is our tendency to skate on the surface of things, where we will ask one question and then move on. And I think in this institute, this is all about not doing that, right? So we're thinking about those things. So what we've noticed is, people will say, well, how did you like the video? That was great. and then we move on. So what did you like about it? Well, I really like that they talked about respect. Now, as a mediator, words like respect are flags for me. Whenever I hear a word like that, I always want to unpack it. And so, words like, we all want what's best for people. That's to unpack that one. Don't do it at your peril, because you can have 10 people in a room that you probably know and have 10 different ideas of what is best for people or what does respect look like. So just unpacking it, what does respect look like? So the areas that we look at are curiosity, the real idea of being deeply curious, not trying to mold people into what we think they should do. It's okay. Not trying to mold people into what we think they should do, but really being curious and asking curious questions about how it is that they come to see things in that way. And then specificity. Again, what is that exactly? What is respect for you? What does that look like? And then what we do is we ask people to look at their own experiences. And we say, have you had an experience like that yourself? Or someone that you support. Have you been with someone that you support and you've seen something like that? So that ties it into real life, really lived experiences. It also allows us to find the places where people's stories intersect. And it isn't about, they're the same stories, but they allow us to enter into someone else's experience in ways that are authentic. So for example, Norm, growing up as a person with a disability, didn't have the same experience as I had growing up as an immigrant kid in a very closed community. But you know what? There's places where our stories have intersected, where we can legitimately say, I know something about what that feels like. So we're trying to look for those ideas. And then finally, action and alternatives. And sometimes action isn't action, as we know from being here too. Sometimes action is simply, what do we think about? Is there another way of thinking about this? Should we sit with this for a while? Should we just notice things on a day-to-day basis? Maybe even keep track of what we're noticing. Write some stuff down, When does this happen? How is belonging created? Where is it underlined in the work that we do? Just noticing. So we actually have done that training, and that's what we're going to do. It's less effective in the webinar kind of online thing, but we're hoping that it at least will give people an idea of how to go for depth rather than breadth. So finally, let's show you Peter Park. Peter Park is our elder statesman he lives here in Ontario, and again, he's one of the co-founders of People First Canada. We interviewed him at his home in Toronto about a year ago, and he talked a lot about his experiences growing up, or not growing up, actually being institutionalized as a young man because of a seizure disorder. And some of those stories are quite horrific, and we included them deliberately because what we have seen, don't know what it's like where you are, but we're seeing that in some agencies, people are telling us there's pushback around listening to stories about institutionalization. People are saying, that's melodramatic, it isn't like that anymore. Why do we need to know about that? We've had people actually say that people are resentful of hearing about it, but the old thing about history repeating itself. And Peter is very compelling. However, the piece we want to show you is not about that. The piece we want to show you is a piece that we find absolutely delightful. It was a moment in time where Norm asked Peter about moving into his own home for the first time. And we just want to share that with you because it's like a sparkling moment. Here we go. Oh, ready? Okay. Oops, that's Anne. Okay, I'll click through. Sorry. Ah, there he is. So this is Peter.
When you got out of the institution, where did you move to?
First went to a transitional home, and it was just a stepping stone to group home. And it's a you can have a bed in this 32-bed residence. And I said, hold on, I don't want to move into anything that's, I came out of an institution, I'm not moving back to an institution, and you can take your 32-bed group home or residence or whatever you want to call it, and shove it and lock it.
How long did it take you before you lived in the other room?
3.5, almost 4 years. And I made up my own budget that I want my own apartment, and started in my own apartment.
What was that day like?
What was that day like? That was wonderful. I had a key to my front door. I could, I don't know, I just wanted to celebrate with everybody and their neighbors. Okay, I was free here. I had my freedom. I could do what I want. I could get up. I could sleep in if I want to. Get up when I want to. Make my bed or not if I want to. Such everyday things that everybody does. So I felt marvelous, wonderful, fantastic. This was a whole lifestyle change. It took, for me not to make my bed every day, it took me about 2 months to get over that recommendation of, okay, make my bed every day.
And when we were finished that interview, Peter's wife, Rhea, walked right through all of our recording equipment, plunged herself down in the seat and said, yep, he came out of an institution, and now he's in another one, the institution of marriage.
We are having a great time doing this. We are delighted that agencies are telling us that it's having the impact we hoped it would. And thank you, Jack and Linda, for giving us this opportunity to share this. You really see this as another way that we can bring these very important conversations that we have during institutes like this to a much wider and much larger audience. So we're having a blast. So if people want more information, as you go out, we have the brochures. So thank you for your comment. Any comments? Yeah.
Cool.
Lisa, actually, we have an interview in the can. We have a lot of interviews in the can that we have not yet had time to edit. Beth, Lisa, Connie, many others, and we're getting to it. It's been a two-person project, largely, and our web designer, Chris, who is this young person who never had any involvement in the field at all, and has become totally outraged about what he's seen and is becoming politicized. We love it. And we're going to actually be bringing on another young video editor who's going to help us do this. So, like we say, it's been bare bones. The people who have been interviewed by us will know that our initial lighting system was made out of PVC pipe and stuff we bought at Home Depot, which we learned how to do on YouTube, because you can learn how to do brain surgery on YouTube. And this wasn't as complicated. We made it work. But finally, we caved and bought a slightly better lighting system. So actually, now that we are talking about this, we are set up upstairs. And one of the things we would really like to do at this institute is to just briefly introduce some of you about your experiences here, so that we can help other people to see what the Summer Institute is like and maybe spark interest in other places around what it is that you're experiencing. So if you're interested in doing that with us, let us know. So any other? I know, it's almost quarter after 5, and everyone's like, thank you.
Excellent, that's too much. We just wanted to check in to see if there are any very brief announcements for the community, other than at least want to ask, so we can let the Royal Ontario Museum know for security purposes, how many folks are planning to meet here tomorrow night to get over to, that's how we're going to do it. Yeah, for the Royal Ontario exhibit on fashion and design. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right, that's great. Stay tuned. Either look at the board or there'll be an announcement tomorrow morning. I think Jack and Kathy have been thinking about how that would happen, whether people will meet just right outside the ROM or leaving from here. So we'll figure that out. But thanks for that number. Anything else? We're going to go with check the board. Only that one thing, and be sure, folks, to check the board tomorrow morning for things that will have changed. And you remember that Peter marks, for people who weren't clear about that this morning, Peter is in room 200 at 7:30 in the morning. Bless the 40 people who found him there this morning.
I stuck a couple of things up on the board yesterday that I didn't talk about that Linda reminded me I should probably mention. There's something I'm calling Leaving an Impression, which is this gathering of natural materials that I ask people to do to create some kind of a piece of fabric. And there's some stuff in there that I'm still not quite understanding why it's important, but I think it's really another way for us to sort of mark some time and mark some effort that we've made and some thinking and provide some connecting with some people, whoever happens to show up who wants to do that. So that's up on the board. I think it's right after lunch tomorrow. And then I posted something about mentoring intention. And I think that's going to shift probably down to a little bit later in the day on Wednesday, because there's 2 things that my friend Wendy is doing that I want to be a part of. So if people could just note the board, I'll move those around today.
I was trying to get up here and take the microphone. We have a poster paper over here on the side. The group that was going to meet today at lunchtime talking about engaging parents in the community, engaging parents that you're working with, and the idea of how do you set parents on a path that from the very beginning that is going to help them realize the importance of their children engaging community from the beginning. And I know a lot of you, I'm sure, have great insight into that. And if you wanted to share a question that you have, if you wanted to share a story about what that's looked like for you, if you can't attend our session tomorrow from 4 to 5 in room 205, if you just want to write down your name or come talk to me, any of those ideas. It'll be myself, Joanna, Lisa, and then the rest of the ladies from the Oregon Consortium of Family Networks from Oregon. And we're parents of children who experience disability ourselves, and so how do we do that? Oh, sorry, I don't know what day it is. I need a nap. So it's Wednesday in that same room, 205. So we would love your input.
Beer. If anyone wants to join us, we're going to Bar Volo. Bar Volo, I don't know where it is, but if anyone knows where it is, that would be great. Yeah, we're just gonna go here, and I don't know if it's walkable or I don't even know where it is, but we're gonna find our way there. And if you want to just bring some paper and draw with us too, Johnny will probably be drawing all the time. So that's it. Oh, now we're gonna go to as soon as we break. Yeah. Happy hour.
One more thing have you got another thing?
And for whoever wants to join me for a 15-minute shin shake to clear your head and get back into your bodies. When we leave, I'll be outside sunshine, so you'll be on the recess right now. Just 15 minutes.
Okay, now there's going to be shaking and then beer. And then there's... right, the folks who were at the incredibly fabulous event last night at the 519 Community Center had a chance to engage with Ella in the circle sing, and we all learned something about vocal improvisation. And if you'll remind people about what else is going on tonight.
So she's holding yoga in the park and another sing circle, song circle. The notice is on the board there, it's green, but if anyone wants to join us, we'll meet probably on the corner where the metro is, just outside the accommodation building. Yeah, that one. It starts at 6:30, so we're looking at heading off at 6:15. You want to join?
May the force be with you. See you tomorrow morning at 8:45.